afternoon. The Minister responsible for Finance has some statements to make with regards to the budgeting process and exactly where we are currently. When he's done with the statement, I will moderate and take questions from you specific to this matter and this matter only, and then we'll proceed from here. So, Minister, where are your hands?
Right. Thank you very much indeed, and good afternoon to you all. Really appreciate your finding time to be here with us, and we indeed thank God for the very life we have, and we acknowledge that all that we do, the battle is His, and He will see Ghana through. So I thank you truly for honoring an invitation to this press conference. And on Friday, 26 November 2021, the Parliament of Ghana was scheduled to sit and conclude a debate on the 2022 budget statement and economic policy of government. After the closing statement from both the majority and minority leaders, the Speaker gave me the opportunity to make a statement to the House. During the statement, I pray the House to be given the opportunity to engage further with the minority on the demands they have raised in their closing remarks. Unfortunately, my request was declined. I had requested this opportunity to engage the minority because I believe that the tradition of consensus in approving the budget that we had nurtured over the last 5 years was important for our national resolve and determination to be united in transforming our society. So on Tuesday, November 30th, 2021, I'm proud to the approval and to achieve consensus, I asked Parliament again for an opportunity to effect some modifications to the 2022 budget. I did this after consulting with the President and also to respect his wish that these modifications address the concerns of the Minority Caucus and various other stakeholders, whilst ensuring that a deficit target of 7.4% and a positive primary balance be maintained in view of the nation's determination to reduce our debt levels, raise adequate revenue, to promote youth employment, build infrastructure, especially our roads, and fund other government obligations, including the flagship programs. So on behalf of the President, I have written to the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament with details of modifications in response to emerging concerns by all stakeholders, including the Minority Caucus. Please allow me to update the people of Ghana on what we have proposed, on the modifications that we have submitted to the Speaker. With regards to Ajapa Royalties Limited, we shall amend paragraphs 442 and 443 to take out reference to mineral royalties collateralization. It's important to note that any reference to Ajapa was for information purpose and as such was not reflected in the fiscal framework of the budget. In respect of the unfortunate tidal waves which rendered about 3,000 people homeless in Keta, Ketu South, and Anloga constituencies, we shall make the necessary budgetary allocations of at least 10 million Ghana cedis to complete the feasibility engineering studies for the coastal communities adversely affected. We'll broaden the scope of the study to consider a more comprehensive solution to protect Ghana's 540 kilometers of coastline, including the 149 kilometers between Aflawe and Pram. Meanwhile, NADMO has responded to the humanitarian crisis created by the tidal waves on the coastline. Relating to the ACA energy transaction, we shall amend paragraphs 829 of the 2022 budget on the acquisition of a stake from Aker Energy and AGM Petroleum by GMPC to reflect the resolution of Parliament dated 6 July 2021 that the terms and conditions of the loan for the acquisition of the shares shall be brought to Parliament for consideration pursuant to Article 181 of the Constitution. And on the benchmark values, we shall avert any hardship to importers and consumers while safeguarding the interests of local manufacturing industries to secure and expand jobs for our people. The administrative exercise, which review 43 out of 81 line items, has the objective to promote local manufacturing and the 1D1F policy, including the assembling of vehicles. It is important to note that this adjustment affects only 11.4% of the total CIF value of imports, of which 50% is for vehicles. From our analysis, the potential increase in retail prices should be relatively insignificant, and therefore inflation should be muted. The Youth Start program will also support our resourceful traders and appropriate training and access to capital to become manufacturers in order to expand the industrial base of our society and our import substitution strategy in line with our Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. We will work with the relevant committees of Parliament to reflect these modifications in the 2022 budget, as is the usual practice before the appropriation bill is passed. Any other concerns which will emerge shall be addressed during the discussions of the estimate by the committee, as has been the tradition. On the matter of the e-levy, the elephant in the room, having regard to its serious fiscal implications, we'll continue our consultations with the Minority Caucus in Parliament and other relevant stakeholders with a view to achieving consensus and reverting to the House in the shortest possible time. Ladies and gentlemen, with the approval of the budget secured on 30th November 2021, we should now move on to the urgent task of working towards the passage of the appropriation bill before Parliament rises on December 17, 2021. We believe that the concerns raised in Parliament on the 2022 budget should be resolved during the discussions of the budget estimate of MDAs, other government obligations, and bills at the committee level in Parliament, as we have always done. Indeed, there have been occasions that Parliament, through the Finance Committee, had revised fiscal measures. There have also been several instances that estimate of some MDAs have been revised to reflect recommendations of the committees of Parliament. It is not uncommon for the allocations in the appropriation to change to reflect the discussions at the consideration stage. Ladies and gentlemen, the national budget remains the single most effective tool to address the greatest challenges of our nation. As a country, we cannot allow such a strategic national tool to be held hostage by partisan or parochial interests, especially when the consideration stage offers every opportunity for such redress. The 2022 budget has an added layer of significance for government as it drives forward the great mission of our time, building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation. The budget seeks to address the triple helix of our time: high unemployment, high debt, and inadequate infrastructure, even as we pursue our agenda for increased social mobility and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, on unemployment, we are faced with an urgent challenge. Our population has grown from 6.7 million in 1960 to 30.8 million this year, and has gotten increasingly useful. In 1960, for instance, we had approximately 1.1 million Ghanaians between the ages of 15 and 24, and this year that number stands at 6.3 million people. The key question becomes, how do we extend opportunities to our youth in a sustainable way and eliminate the indignity of joblessness, underemployment, and vulnerable jobs? The theme for the Ajinkwa budget is building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation, fiscal consolidation, and job creation. The budget outlines the policy direction and fiscal framework for 2022, as well as the medium-term vision of His Excellency the President. How do we reject this President's executive policy? With that approach, we may never have had the free SHS policy. The budget also introduces the groundbreaking multi-year Ghana cedi 10 billion Youth Start program, a historic intervention which would involve the collaboration of our local financial institutions, development partners, and international financial institutions. It seeks to tackle comprehensively the youth unemployment issue. Like the senior high school program, the Youth Start program will have an equally momentous impact on our society, a game changer in social mobility, decent jobs, and dignity. The program is designed to provide relevant skills and access to long-term affordable capital, to empower our youth to create their own businesses, and also to expand the private sector to create more jobs for Ghanaians. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned in my budget speech, recent economic data suggests that the overall tax to GDP ratio for sub-Saharan Africa in 2018 was 16.5%. The tax to GDP ratio for Ghana in 2019 was estimated to be 12.2%. Our tax to GDP ratio is lower than our peer countries in West Africa and significantly lower than many developed nations. South Africa 26.7%, Senegal 16.4%, Sub-Sahara average 16.5%, and Ghana 12.2% in 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, these statistics are a poor reflection on the country and highlight the need to change the narrative. We cannot continue to depend on such a low tax base to generate adequate revenue, service and reduce our debt, to build our infrastructure, especially roads, and to create needed jobs for our youth. The future is therefore one of sacrifice from all of us and burden sharing as a people with one language to transform our republic. Furthermore, out of about 18 million potential income taxpayers, only 2.4 million persons, approximately 8% of the total population, are registered as personal income taxpayers as of August 2021. Only 45,109 entities are registered as corporate taxpayers, while 54,364 persons are registered as self-employed taxpayers at the Ghana Revenue Authority. And there are about 17 million registered voters and about 19 million active mobile money accounts. In using the 17 million registered voters or the 19 million mobile money accounts as a proxy for Ghanaians that are of adult age and economically active, and comparing to the 2.4 million Ghanaians who pay income taxes, we are confronted with the stark reality that the structure of our economy is quite informal, unlike the Western economies, and as such, the traditional tax handles, like the personal income tax, also known as payee, may not be as effective in raising the required revenue. Ladies and gentlemen, we are determined to enhance domestic revenue mobilization. The essence of our proposal on the e-levy is to widen the tax net and generate the required revenue to support entrepreneurship, youth employment, to build our infrastructure, especially roads, and reduce our debts. Permit me to emphasize that the e-levy represents our greatest opportunity to, in the medium term, broaden the tax base and meet the tax to GDP ratio of 20% as pertains among our peers. To lessen the impact of the e-levy on consumers and subscribers, especially the more vulnerable, we shall work with all stakeholders, including the techos, to ensure that we respond to the needs of the people. We shall also ensure that administrative measures will be taken to avoid attempts at evading the e-levy taxes. The proposed e-levy is largely progressive. We have intentionally set the Ghana cedi 100 threshold, covering about 40% of Momo users, mindful of the need to exempt vulnerable groups while continuing to encourage the development of our nascent digital economy. This, to a very large extent, would ensure that a significant number of Ghanaians low-income earners in the informal sector whose daily transactions fall below the 100 cedi threshold are totally exempt from the payment of the e-levy. There are other issues that have been raised by the minority caucus and concerned citizens, such as increasing fuel prices, poor infrastructure, and insufficient job creation. We expect this budget to tackle all of these issues. The provision of the threshold demonstrates a caring government, the actions of a government that has since 2017 implemented some of the most innovative social intervention that this nation has ever seen. As you can see from the budget, various measures have been outlined. We'll continue to remain people-centered in our transformation agenda through the e-levy and other revenue financing sources. We will be establishing the unprecedented 10 billion U-Start program, our vehicle to remove the fundamental impediment to the growth of enterprises in Ghana, access to capital. We'll also address the provision of the requisite skills for our young people to confidently start, manage, and expand their own businesses while expanding the private sector to create more jobs. Significantly overhaul the digital infrastructure on which the transactions occur. This is to increase the assurance and protection as well as security within the cyberspace. We will aggressively expand the digitization agenda to bring more convenience to Ghanaians. Efforts to improve the delivery of health by digitizing records, supporting platforms for e-pharmacy, and improving birth certificate issuance to newborns will be sustained with funding from this levy. And to expand road infrastructure, we are currently working with the Ministry of Roads and Highways to finalize all the roads to be supported by the e-levy. We expect to publish this list by end of this year. Fellow Ghanaians, putting a levy on electronic transfer is undoubtedly a new and innovative way of raising revenue for this country that leapfrogs the lack of the typical infrastructure that is required to collect taxes via traditional means. This approach capitalizes on the new digital age that we find ourselves in today and the advent of e-money and proliferation of online transactions. Most of us today are just as comfortable ordering food online or clothes from a virtual shop as we are walking into a shop or a restaurant. We need to review our approach to tax collection to reflect this new reality. But of course, with all such new cutting-edge and innovative initiatives, we do expect to encounter some challenges during the implementation stage, as we humbly request that you all bear with us as we roll out this new way of revenue collection. We'll also set up call centers to receive any complaints and all suggestions. In this consultation period, we expect to listen more to such views and ensure that the mistakes that others have made are averted in Ghana. To protect the public purse, ladies and gentlemen, we have also heard increasing concern on the need to be efficient with public expenditure. As a government, we have demonstrated full commitment to protecting the public purse and using the funds through various revenue policies judiciously. But there's more to be done. In the 2022 budget, we have committed to consolidate our efforts through the following measures. The use of the Ghana Integrated Financial Management System in initiating and processing all requests will be strictly enforced. Additionally, GIFMIS will be retooled to enable potential contractors and suppliers to verify and confirm availability of funding for awards of contracts. Only items specified in approved MDA's procurement plans posted on the PPA website can be considered for procurement contracts, and ensuring that MOUs and agreements that commit the government of Ghana financially are first and foremost approved by the Minister for Finance. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the full consequences of not passing a budget are serious. This would imply that from 1st January 2022, for government to continue work, we will need to obtain parliamentary approval to spend in advance of appropriation. Other than that, the entire government will have to shut down, which would mean, to name a few, no salaries for the almost 700,000 public sector workers, including nurses, doctors, teachers, personnel of the security services, no government services and other expenditures, including payment of contractors, uncertainties in the business environment, and pressure on the currency leading to currency depreciation. Furthermore, would have incurred devastating damage to our fiscal consolidation program, debt sustainability, and international capital markets credibility. Ladies and gentlemen, government is very committed to addressing the challenges we face as a nation and sustaining our recovery from the impact of the pandemic within our fiscal consolidation and debt sustainability. We have a very competent team managing the economy, and the prospects are bright. I believe that this budget sets us on a path of irreversible transformation, from dependence on the state to individual enterprise, from generation of job seekers to a generation of job creators, and from a place of inertia and uncertainty to enterprise, innovation, and progress for all. Let me express my deepest appreciation to Parliament for the continuous support we have received over the years. We will count on them for approval of the estimates and appropriation. We are also thankful to the Ghanaian people for their sustained interest in the process towards building our nation for today and the future. I would like to take this opportunity to send a congratulatory message to our industrious farmers and fisher folk for their tremendous contribution to the economy and development of the country. As you know, last year, the agri sector grew by 7.4%. We are truly grateful for your hard work in feeding this nation and delivering stable economy, muted inflation, and will continue to support you to achieve even greater feats. Let me also take this opportunity to congratulate the President as the Man of the Year in the Forbes magazine, continuing to show the beacon for Africa and the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention, and God bless us all. And let us move with courage, with love, with self-discipline, and the good Lord will bless us and bless our nation, Ghana. Thank you very much.
Honourable Minister, thank you for the statement. Colleagues, we'll do two quick things. For the benefit of our colleagues who are broadcasting in 2 minutes, I'll do a quick summary, and then we'll take your questions. Please indulge me there. But just to sum up, the Honourable Minister has mentioned about 6 major things. Number one is that, pursuant to all the conversations that have been going on, he has formally written now to Parliament, through the Speaker of Parliament, communicating the modifications which he mentioned will be included in the budget as it was approved on Tuesday. You will notice that in that conversation there were about 5 things that had been mentioned by the minority, but this afternoon he's mentioned about 7 things, because we are consulting and engaging with a broad spectrum of stakeholders, the minority and other stakeholders. So you notice about 5 of the issues raised by the minority and about 2 things. He spells out what government's position is on all of those ones. And then for the electronic levy, he mentions the fact that the engagements will continue. He also talks about the inadequacies of our revenues generally to meet our very legitimate needs as a country, and why therefore it's important that we work to raise some more revenue using the e-levy as a very innovative tool there. He also makes the point that the most important policy proposal in this budget is this U-Start program. And it appears we all have moved away from the biggest problem which we are trying to solve, and we are all having a conversation on one revenue measure. But the biggest challenge we're facing as a country, which we've all been talking about, we saw you all running programs on it on your TVs, etc., is unemployment. And this budget spells out the most significant program to deal with it. And I think the Honourable Minister has spoken to that one. Again, the 7th item, expenditure rationalization, it wasn't part of the 5 issues that have been raised by the minority. But you notice that the 5 issues plus benchmark plus expenditure rationalization are the 7 major issues that he's speaking to this afternoon. He's spoken about what to do with it. And then he concludes by talking about the consequences of not passing the appropriations or estimates. Because we move from the approval of the policy, we are now going to do estimates and appropriations, and it's important that we all rally behind the flag to achieve this. Broadcasting with Minister Acheche Nyamabeye and Somudi Kind, and the Minister to say what for Parliament watro krata or parliament formally. As a krata no, the womb any and someone a briar approve budget no, or cast a yen dani any kakra or budget now or the kotu honimu, potokasamu, yes, modifications. So, like I had that parliament approval policy, no. Mr. Speaker, I said the budget is approved subject to Sa and Niemano. And said, if you look at any other Kumano, no master said, Sa Niemano, and Tron Fembai. In the minister, Trocrata at the court parliament, and on watching what I say. It also means in someone.
The Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has been briefing the media. He's been speaking on the controversial e-levy, which he says government will continue to negotiate with the minority for an agreement on the way forward. He's been speaking on the unemployment situation in the country as well. My colleague Charles Nixon Yeboah with the business desk has joined me in the studio to help us understand the import of what the Finance Minister has been saying. First, Charles, let's understand where we are with this e-levy. There's been back and forth with this e-levy, especially because people want to know why this should be charged and whether the economy would collapse if it is not charged. Where are we now with the back and forth?
Well, Aisha, I'm happy that the Finance Minister clearly have said that he has modified the budget and therefore they would do more stakeholder consultations. They will engage the minority on this electronic levy. It's very important. Where we are currently, as we speak, as a country, the e-levy comes as a necessary evil because we do not have money and we need to raise money. If you look at the gap between expenditure and revenue, it's quite huge. Therefore, we need certain measures, revenue, hardcore measures, to be able to bridge that gap. And the e-levy is one of them. So I'm happy that the Finance Minister...
All right, Charles, so I'm told that the Finance Minister is answering some questions. Let's go back to the Information Ministry and listen to the Finance Minister.
A lot of things compared to the seriousness with which we are given to e-levy. And then my second question is, it's good to know that we've made the revisions and we are making progress with the budget process. But given ministers' association with the international community's experience in the capital market and how volatile and sensitive it is, should we have gotten to this level where there was a lot of acrimony with huge implications on our capital market processes and the country's image? Should we have gotten to this level? Couldn't we have handled it in a way that it wouldn't have created the anxieties created among the international community for us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So what is the status of the tax exemptions bill? And then, Kwegu, are you ready? I'm coming to you. So what is the status of the tax exemptions bill, Minister? And was it possible to have foreseen what somebody's reaction could have been and prevented any sort of acrimony? There were earlier two questions. So if the budget program works in accordance with plan, what will be the projected tax to GDP ratio at the end of the fiscal year? And secondly, have the reversals of the benchmark values been included in the revenue estimates for this year? Thank you. Quick, let me come to you quickly and then I'll go to the...
All right, so the Minister spoke about the 10 million cedis earmarked for the feasibility studies on the Blekusu Coastal project.
It says at least.
At least 10 million cedis. We know that what the minority concern has to do with the project itself. Will this 10 million be enough to do the project, or this is just going to take care of feasibility studies? And then on the score of e-levy, the minority say they want 0%. Today the Chamber of Telecoms spoke and they say they want 0.25.
No, they said 1%.
Minority leaders. Yes. They've gone back on it as we need to understand that the leader spoke on his own. And so
who is saying this?
Sam George and then Muntaka also had a statement up this weekend.
The members say the leader spoke on his own?
Yes.
I see. Go ahead.
So we also have, I have this question about the e-levy. Well, is the government amenable to a certain reduction, and will they announce that reduction? And also on the e-levy, the minority is raising concerns about some $40 million that have been allocated for some services, some collection. They are saying GRA or Bank of Ghana can do the tracking alone.
It's 241 million cedis. Because the budget is in cedis.
In cedis, 241 million cedis. Can the Bank of Ghana or the GRA do this? Do we need another external?
Very well.
So my question is on the electronic transaction levy as well.
What's your name,
my name is Etonam. I report for TV3
Go ahead,
and 3FM. So we've heard that the e-levy has been reviewed somehow. We spoke to the Ghana Association of Bankers and they say that bank transfers are exempt. We are also hearing that inward remittances are exempt. So this is like a normal tax. So it will be good for us to get details on whether or not inward remittances are exempt and whether bank transfers are exempt as well. We're also hearing that the majority says it's now 1.5%, not 1.75%.
The majority?
It will be good, yeah, the majority, I heard.
Who from the majority saying this?
Afayo Markins. He said that it's been reviewed from 1.75% to 1.5%. It will be good for us to get details on that. We're hearing stakeholders saying they're expecting 0.5%. This is a new levy. Are we not already paying communication service tax? There are concerns that it's the same thing we are having to pay again. So it will be good for you to respond to that.
Okay. So, Minister, will 10 million Ghana cedis be enough to complete the Lekoso project? By the way, Minister mentioned at least 10 million to commence feasibility works. And then there's a question about the e-levy, whether it's 1% or it's 0% or how do we reconcile the two. And then there's a question about what is the 241 million Ghana cedis programmed in the budget as e-levy related expenditure, what is it for? Because there's a claim that it is for the services of a private company to do that. So some clarification will be helpful. Yes, Minister, we're in your hands.
Thank you very much indeed, and thanks for the questions. I think one of the first questions was the expectation really is that with this new tax measures that we have, we actually will be able to move to just around 16 to 16.5% moving towards 20. So we are really excited about that, and it just really goes to amplify the need for all of us to participate in the payment of taxes, so that the burden is shared. And that really is excitement about going digital and using the new electronic modes to do this. Yes, the benchmark issues were incorporated in the fiscals as we have them. E-levy, in terms of having alternatives, I think that's something that we need to get clear. We have this triple helix of unemployment, which is really quite debilitating if you look at the numbers. And then we have our debt that we need to take care of to reduce our interest costs, but really to also be able to mobilize resources internally. And so we are not subject to all of these foreign exchange risks, and we can plan much better. And then all of us, of course, rail against the issue of infrastructure, especially roads, to open up our country. But the record of who is paying for this, for the 30.8 million, is quite abysmal. So the nature of the e-levy itself, gentlemen, enables all of us to be roped in and to understand the sacrifices that we have to do if we want to move to a nation with a commitment to transform ourselves and break the back of these problems that we have inherited, and just a new dawn and a new beginning to go forward. But that is not to say that the areas of inefficiencies must not be closed. And that there's a commitment to that. And so the tax exemption bill we're expecting to pass in the sitting of the 8th Parliament the fees and charges bill also, we expect that to happen. And so all of that then goes to reduce, sort of the volatility and the uncertainty on our revenues, and we can plan and do things better with everybody contributing their quota to this. So philosophically, we also, as I mentioned, have realized, you have realized, the way in which the nature of commerce is going. And therefore tax handles are going to change, and we better move into that regime now and begin to understand the issues around them and perfect it as we move forward. And there's no better time than now. I think it's been unfortunate with regards to the responses and what has occurred in Parliament, increasing sort of the volatility in the marketplace and the widening of our spreads in the international capital markets. Yes, it could have been done differently. And as I mentioned today, under the instructions of the President, I sent a letter to the Speaker on the modifications that are required for us to move forward in harmony. So of the 5 areas that the minority have brought to bear, and what we have also heard in the public, we sought to address at least 4 out of the 5. And the real issue of the e-levy, to really continue with the consultation and see how we can find a way to come to redress. But as we mentioned, typically one does not reject the policy orientation of the government, but you go into consideration and committees, and that is where the appropriate changes are made. So we pray that as I sought consensus from November 26th, then successfully on November 30th, this will lead to the House sitting, the estimates being looked at, so that we will meet the December 17th deadline when Parliament is rising, to avoid the untold hardships that may occur. So it's unfortunate, but in the life of a country, all of these things are experiences that we learn, and the public then become a good judge for the politicians in terms of how to manage situations of this nature. I think the issue of Keta, Ketu South, and Anlogan is quite clear with us, and therefore the humanitarian issues will be taken care of. But there's a need really to sort of conclude a thorough feasibility study on it. In reality, we have about 540 kilometers of coastline, and between Aflao and Prampram is about 150, 149 kilometers that we have. In sitting in this chair, in this office, I have seen sea defense projects, somewhere between 3 and 500 million CDs for, let's say, 5 kilometers of sea defense. And I imagine that through the 544, let's say 100, if you want to be simple about it, that then results in what? Maybe 40 or 50 billion US dollars. So there's a real need for us to also really dig deep into understanding the type of technology that we need to use to make sure that we protect the coastline. So I think there's another agency to do that and to review the cost of any such projects. But in terms of what we have to do immediately, I think that is going to be taken care of, and we are very committed to that.
241 million.
241 million. 241 million for the establishment or the facilitation of the e-levy. Is that the question?
Yeah, the question is, there's a 241 million in the budget. What is it for?
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Typically, well, not typically, we do have an understanding of GRA, which uses approximately 3% or so of the money it raises for ensuring that they can make such collections. So truly, this 241 million, it's reserves that we intended to put aside to facilitate GRA's collection of these resources. Now it will be up to GRA to find the means in which they would ensure that with this new tax handle that they have never experienced, they will use their own resources, they will use the current common platform, engage whoever they think is appropriate to ensure that this works, because this has to work. It's our expectation that because of systems that they have already, that may not be required. In addition, typically when we have new tax measures, there's an issue of refunds, and we usually make some compensation for that, maybe sometimes 6% or so of the value, to ensure that if those refunds come, we are able to pay for them. So in essence, this really will be to back up GRA in the way in which we ensure that all of the problems that people envisage and the difficulties other countries have had, we should be ready to support that. There's no agreement with anybody at GRA or Ministry of Finance as to a service provider for this, but quite a number of local Ghanaian companies who helped us with Ghana.gov, have been approached to look at this problem to ensure that we establish it, a lot more firmly, and we do not lose resources in that. So we hope that GRA's platform that they have already may make this quite superfluous in the long run.
Yes, sir, there are two final questions. Is it true that the e-levy has actually been reviewed, and can you give any details if it's true? You've mentioned that it's a subject of further negotiation.
Yeah.
And Tetonam says she's hearing that it's been reviewed. Is it true, and if there are other details? And then finally, there was another question on reduction that you asked.
Right, so the concern is that it's now the exemptions. So inward remittance is exempted, bank transfer is exempted, so it's not a MOMO tax. So if it's a MOMO tax, you're already paying communication service tax. So your concern is that this is another tax in another shape or form.
Okay, so the question is it true that it's been reviewed, and if it has, what are the details? And then there's a claim that it is, or it amounts to double taxation because there are some other elements of tax that look like this. Quick comments on these two.
Great.
I
think that the one of the questions that we need to face as a country is that, are we paying enough taxes? And is everybody paying taxes? So this is a fiscal measure to try and answer those issues and also ensure that we tackle the youth unemployment problem with more revenue, that we look at our debt issues and reverse where we are, and then thirdly, that we also look at our infrastructure in a way. So that is not, and then the issue of everybody participating at this juncture in our life as a nation as to how to move forward. Okay, so that really should be the fundamental issue. Will this enable us to meet these demands that we as a nation need to tackle? Now, that's a tax measure. Okay. I think the issue for us is, as I mentioned in my letter to the Speaker, the fiscal implications of the e-levy are very clear to us as to how we get these resources to do the work that I have mentioned. And so the consultations are still going on with stakeholders, widely, to find means in which we can agree, we can look at the fiscals, ensure that the 7.4% deficit is attainable, that by 2024 we are back to the FRA of 5%, etc., and that our debt levels are going down. So it's not an inconsequential decision, and we continue really with urgency to make sure that we get back to stakeholders and minority caucus, in the shortest possible time. With regards to the minority moving from 0 to 1%, etc., I can't say much about that.
So just a bit of clarity. So as it stands, the E-levy is still 1.75.
The E-levy is still 1.75. We're in serious consultations, keeping clear about the fiscal implications of what it will mean.
And then the coverage still, bank transfers are covered and inward remittances are covered. All that has not been reviewed.
I think, as Minister has mentioned, I know, I'm giving you the clarity. As Minister has mentioned, it is a matter that is at large for negotiations. I think it will help those discussions and the broader public education if we don't begin taking some fixed positions on it. The Minister has mentioned that it's a 1.75. We've heard things in the public domain about 0.5, 1%, etc. But let them finish their conversations on it, and then we can have some definite matters. The last batch of questions, and this time I'll expand to about 6, and then we'll wrap up. I want to take a quick hold on, because I've heard from you earlier. Let me take those who haven't spoken, and if I have an excess, I'll come to you. There are 2 at the back who haven't spoken. Then there's a call here, 3, 4, 5. That's fine, that right? 5. Is there a 6th? Else I'll go to Kweku and give him the 6th. Kweku, so I'll give you the last word as a 6th. So let's start from this end, and let's be snappy, please.
Good afternoon, Minister. My name is Joshua from BNOT. So, given the going back to the E-levy, how long do you think it's going to take for it to be passed? In terms of the acceptance, given the restraints from the minority and also other stakeholders, in terms of the consensus building on this particular topic on the E-levy, how long do you think it's going to take, given that appropriation bill is supposed to be passed before the end of the year?
So, Minister, are you hopeful that the conversations on the E-levy will be concluded before appropriations is passed?
My question has to do with the E-levy. They are concerned that...
You don't like you start, you like E-levy. No, go ahead, I'm just kidding.
Okay. So they are concerned that government agencies, and things like that, government agencies which use Momo as a means of payment would also fall within the tax. And that would essentially be government tax in itself. So would there be exemptions made for these payments?
Payment for government services?
No, government agencies, let's say LEAP and those kind of things.
Those are government services.
Government tax itself.
Yeah. So will payment for government services be included in this? Yes, and then there were final 4 here. Let's start with Echo. Echo. Let's get the microphone to Echo, please. So are you optimistic that the conversation on E-levy will be concluded before appropriation is passed? Will E-levy apply to government services or payment for government services? Yes, Echo.
Yeah, thank you. Minister, we noticed that for the first time in the budget presentation, you mentioned a deficit figure that includes legacy debts. Does it mean that moving forward we're going to have a one deficit figure? And why that decision? Because it was not so in the past. And on the paragraphs you altered in your modifications, Ijapa and Eka, we don't have the benefits of the contract, the agreements yet. Can you give us pointers what exactly has changed in those graphs?
And please let's take the second question again.
In the modification, yes, you mentioned that you altered a graph or so in the Ijapa.
Paragraph.
No, a paragraph. A paragraph in the Ijapa and then the Eka deal. I'm saying that we don't have the benefit of that document here. So if you could point us to what exactly that means.
No, it was quite clear. It says it will be amended to take out the reference to mineral royalties collateralization. It's clear here.
So it's a sentence that it is going to take out?
Yes.
Okay, so
that is the discomfort of those who have raised it. So that will be taken out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And then on the other matter as well, we've always talked about deficits if you include energy sector, etc., and if you exclude them. So it's not the first time.
No, usually when the government presents the statement, the budget statement, we have that usually in the footnotes. Yeah. But for fiscal years, the government really will present, for example, this year we are looking at 9.4.
And so your question is, are we going to get to a point where it will no longer be in the footnote?
Where the recorded figure of deficit is encapsulated almost automatically.
Yes, so there's nothing to report in the footnotes.
No, I'm asking, so what is the thinking that went into that different trajectory that we are embarking upon? And maybe finally I ask, you want Ghanaians to sacrifice, we are sacrificing. Today there was a strike by transport unions asking for reductions. So the average Ghanaian is really already sacrificing. Can we really bear this? Are you not killing these same goose that you deserve that will lay the golden eggs? Thanks.
And then I'll take a final two. The gentleman and then quickly.
Yeah, my name is Emmanuel. I'm with GH1 TV. The e-levy is earmarked, among other things, to do with infrastructure, unemployment, and then 10 billion Ghana cedis use that. Of the 1.75%, I would like to ask, how much of that amount goes into use that? And then secondly, Minister respectfully mentioned expenditure rationalization. I like to think of it in reducing our expenditure estimates. So the question is, are we going to delay some government spending until 2023 or 2024, or we are looking at reducing the estimate in its entirety? Thank you very much.
Kingsley, Ghanaian Times. My question is on the road toll. The road toll form part of government revenue mobilization or projection for 2021. Now that it has been abrogated, how much is it going to affect our revenue projection for 2021?
2022.
No, I mean 2021.
He means
the 2 months.
He means in the last 6 weeks of the year, how much
are we going to lose?
Impact is it, and whether or not it's significant. Okay.
Thank you.
Right, so final one on the conversations around the strike today by transport workers. They said they want 5 taxes removed from the price buildup. The government met them prior to the presentation of the budget and said it will be captured in the budget, because nothing was mentioned of it in the budget. What exactly is going
Who said it will be captured in the budget?
According to the transport ministry, when they met the transport unions. And then on the second question about the...
This is apart from the 0 rating of the 2 out of the 5 taxes you made.
Right. See, they said they want 5 taxes removed.
Yes, and 2 of them have been 0 rated. Yeah. So you are saying that apart from that, they're asking, can they hear about the other 3? That's the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on government services, the fees and charges going up by 15%, and then subject to annual inflation review. There's also upset us that is also killer, and I didn't see anything. Is the government doing anything about that particular aspect of the budget? Thank you.
But the fees and charges bill hasn't even gone to Parliament. Okay.
Yes, I think.
And I guess part of what Minister is saying in his earlier statements that there are things that, apart from the policy, you now come with the specific measures, during which period you can have the specific conversations about those ones. Minister, when you have to final budget.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for this. I think Joshua talked about the consensus building, and that's really sort of an important attribute of our society, and that's our sociology. And we have done that successfully since 2017. So it's quite unsettling where we are today. But, given that we've been able to accommodate 4 out of the 5 and actually done a bit more on other issues, I'm confident that we should be able to come to a consensus and be able to have the House rise at the right time on December 17th. So that's my prayer to the good nature of ourselves. And what we've gone through these 10 days, I guess, would enable all of us to calm down and see the greater good of the country. E-levy, government services, really government services will look, in terms of government tax in itself, that would be exempted from that. Mr. Minister of State, that's correct, is that right? Government services will not be taxed on itself. So that's that. Then I could raise, some fundamental issues that Minister of Information has answered. But I think for the narrative and the conversation, we are not, as a country, an island. And I suppose when you read, you would know the issue of global supply chains and its effect globally, and therefore its impact on inflation. You would know the issue of fuel and OPEC stance, and America even having to release its reserves, all of that. And then you know our import content as a people with regards to importation of about $2 billion worth of food and flowers and toothpicks and all of that stuff. And then you know who pays taxes and who doesn't pay taxes. So those are questions that we ask ourselves as to what type of austerity do we need to be able to break through this colossus of debt, of unemployment, and of infrastructure. And what is it the nation has to do at this point in time to be able to get through? I think if you look at the past 2 years and the type of, the extent to which government went to make sure the lives and livelihoods were saved, and if you look at social interventions since 2017 with regards to senior high school, with regards to national health, with regards to the LEAP program, and with regards to free water and whatever, you can't pretend that nothing has happened. I think we've done the most roads also in the period than any other government. So we need to confront that and say, how do we now all participate in this burden sharing to go forward? Because we can do it. And the charge now is we are at this junction, we are a people of great resolve, we are the Black Star. What is it that we have to do? Lock hands together, circle the wagons, and say that we'll break this helix. And that's a conversation that we should be having around. If you look at the youth, whose child should not be working? And what is the indignity of staying at home? And what is the cost to that person? So an intervention of 10 billion cedis, which is historic, never been done before, with that type of impact that senior high school is also having. It's going to change the way in which dynamism, innovation, self-confidence will come to our country. And we want those legs to be moving. So 0.25% of the levy is almost equivalent to 1 billion cedis, which we have committed to do the next 3 years to make sure that the issue of access to capital, training, and technology are available for people to be entrepreneurs as we build an entrepreneur nation. But even if not everyone can be an entrepreneur, private sector with more resources will expand to be able to absorb more people. And that really, I think for me, the Youth Start program is what gets our common humanity in place, and to think for the reason, for the sacrifices that we have to do to move to the next level of middle or high income country. And that's just the reality of facing the world that we are in, and we as a people saying there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And let us go for high achievement so that we can really break through this perennial problem. So that's how I look at it, and the old talk about you know, breaking the golden egg and all of that. It's very, very emotive, you know, but truly to get social mobility, there has to be a way in which we found a way to educate people, which some other parties said was impossible, and we did that in the same way in which we are bringing this 10 billion intervention to make it possible to see a different world for our people. And so the Youth Start program is a game changer for the country in terms of an sustainable entrepreneurial nation. And that's where we should go as a people. So very excited about that, and looking forward, you know, to an engaged society that would really herald this new beginning that we are talking about. Mr. Minister, I'm not sure what the road toll program.
Yeah, would there have any significant effect?
I think it was about maybe 74 million CDs for the whole year. So
6 weeks.
My old arithmetic will bring it. Yeah. So that's what. But really, in terms of the question will become the opportunity cost, you know, and we are talking about $7 billion CDs for e-levy. And so you begin to sometimes ask the question, why would somebody ask about a 7 million CD problem when we have this gargantuan issue of moving the nation ahead and with that? And the issue of the road tolls, I think there were some things which really were quite pernicious. The issue of pollution and just the hassle of sitting in a trotro, sweating, and being in traffic for that long. I mean, that's not the way to get to work, you know. So for us, I think eliminating that and looking then into the future for these PPPs, which are then real highways, to then toll them, we think will be of more impact and effect than what we have there. So that will be the reason, and that really is the cost to us. Mr. Minister, were there some others?
Yeah, there was a final question on does expenditure rationalization mean that some things are going to be cut or things are going to be deferred?
Yeah. No, I think we laid out some of the issues in terms of intense application of expenditure commitments and the value for money issues, and how we have to make sure that the pricing of government services appropriate projects that are brought to us are looked at, you know, and then times for finishing projects, etc., and that you don't bring third-party projects to ministries, and if it's not on the GiveMIS platform, it just can't happen. So you, the contractor, should beware that when you go and somebody gives you a contract, check on the website whether it is actually part of anything at all, because it just won't have the resources for that. I think that will bring some sanity to that, and looking at things like sea defense and reevaluating, you know, what type of pricing should occur with projects like that would also be looked at.
Mr. Final words. Go ahead.
Beg your pardon? Wow.
There's a 4 p.m. meeting today.
Yeah, I think there's a meeting later this afternoon, so I guess I'll be briefed on that, on exactly, you know, what the impact is and what it means, and the conversations about world fuel prices and what the build-up, etc., to see what we can do. Yeah. Yeah. So this really, and thank you very much for coming and listening to us. But it was really an attempt to let the nation know that it's been a difficult 10 days since we went to Parliament to read the budget, and a number of concerns have been raised by the public and the minority. We have, as I've mentioned, sent a letter to the Speaker for modifications for about 80% of what they had sought, and what other stakeholders had also brought in. The issue of e-levy, I believe, really hinges on the fiscals and exactly what impact any changes will have on that. But I think we'll come close to a resolution by talking to stakeholders and ourselves and determining which direction that we can go. But we also assert that in the considerations and in the committees, these things can be resolved. But we will, as soon as possible, be able to come to Parliament with an agreement, I believe, so that December 7th, 17th, Parliament can rise. But I think one thing we should not lose sight of, and Minister mentioned it, is really this intervention on the Youth Start program. The whole issue, if you look at each district or if you look at each constituency, and you see our youth not employed, and to come up with this historic intervention that we all should look to support and raise with the same enthusiasm in which we did for senior high school. It's a real game changer. Let's see it as that. Let's be the children of Issachar to be able to read the times that we are in and understand the issue of sacrifice, the issue of burden sharing, the issue of all of us paying these taxes, so that the back of debt, the back of unemployment, and the back of infrastructure will be broken. And I'm sure we, the good people of Ghana, the Black Star, will be able to do that. So I am excited about the future. I'm confident that we can get to a consensus that will meet everybody's needs, and Parliament will be able to do its work. Thank you very much indeed.
Honourable Minister, grateful colleagues, thank you for your time, and we look forward to you informing the country that the Minister has written to Parliament, communicating the modifications and the details of those. Thank you very much.
You heard the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta briefing the media on some of the issues that have been raised since the 2020 budget was read and approved, and the issues that people want to be addressed, including the e-levy and also the company that will be brought in to collect the levy or to manage this e-levy. He's been talking about the fact that we are paying too much interest on our loans as a country, and the question remains, why are we there, or why is it so? He's also been talking about amending paragraph 442 and 443 to take out the Japat royalties. Remember, that has also been controversial. CSOs have been calling on government to make sure it doesn't come back. A minority in Parliament has also been warning that they do not want it back. So the minister says something will be done about it so that it doesn't go back. He's been talking about the GDP ratio of 12.2%, which he says is lower than our peers. And of course, what are our peers? What's the situation elsewhere is something we'll be talking about. And he's been talking about the intervention of the Youth Start program, which he says is a game changer. Charles Nixon, before we went there, you were talking about the state of the economy and trying to explain to us whether we really need this e-levy to make our economy work.
Well, I've always said from the beginning that we have issues, and the issue has to do with our fiscals and financing. If you've been tracking government treasury bill sales, bonds, you could tell that we are really struggling, and we need to take an action, and the action e-levy is one of them. But for me, the question is, was there any broader consultations? That is where we should ask ourselves.
That has been established. There was no consultation.
Exactly. So
if you
that is where
if you listen to some of the economists,
exactly,
and all the stakeholders, on this in this area, then you realize that there was no consultation.
So it means there is a fundamental problem, because I felt that there could have been a broader stakeholder consultation that would have, addressed these brouhaha, that I'll call it. For instance, if you listen to the Institute of Economic Affairs, ISE and Co., they are proposing 1 percentage point rate, which relatively it is better. And the issue about discrimination, because we know that the e-levy will primarily be, it's Momo that primarily is going to be affected by the e-levy. There are other electronic transactions that will not be affected. But my issue is, if you look at the number of Ghanaians who undertake Momo, clearly majority are in the middle and lower bracket. Fine, the government argues that 30% are rather in that bracket. They have to prove it. You need to prove it and show that these are the numbers, because for us researchers, we believe that before you make a decision, you must back it with quantitative and qualitative, result, and that would make your case stand out. Okay. And that is where the challenge is.
Interestingly, the finance minister hasn't still announced any resolve to this issue. He says they will still continue to engage the minority in parliament to come to a consensus.
That is brilliant.
Of course, but that's not what Ghanaians want to hear. Ghanaians want a finality to this issue, the back and forth of the e-levy. But there's also this interesting point that he raised about we paying too much interest on our loans. But why is it so?
That is an interesting point, because I have always been arguing that if you look at the amount of monies we've borrowed or the loans we've contracted over a period of about 4.5 years, it beats my imagination. Because if let's say you are a company and you borrow too much, it will get to a time the bank that you would be going for a facility from will deny you of the facility, because on your balance sheet you could tell that your current liabilities are so much that it's very difficult for you to be able to take care of the repayment, and that is where there is a problem. For me, the challenge in the economy has to do with fiscals and finances. So how do we address the challenges? On the revenue side, there had been a lot of research or thesis that we have cited some. There are a lot of loopholes in the system. For instance, the tax exemption bill must be passed, because about 5 billion cedis is lost to tax exemption. And that is huge. That monies can take care of some expenditure. You get the point I'm making. There is also the issue about transfer pricing and declaring of invoicing. These are matters that must be addressed, must be looked at holistically. So, for instance, the finance minister talked about an agency that will be established to help with the collection of the e-levy.
Exactly.
But my argument again is that the revenue assurance and compliance enforcement unit established at the ministry to help mobilize revenue.
What has happened to it?
Exactly. So a lot of market watchers, analysts will say that it's just on paper. We are not seeing actualization. So that is where the point is. So we are not doing much in terms of revenue. 12.5% of tax to GDP is relatively low. We are lower middle income. We should be doing 19 to 20%.
Okay.
So the loopholes in the system must be closed. We must find innovative ways of raising revenue. Secondly, the issue about expenditure. So you talk about interest payment, the question you ask. We have not been prudent with expenditure. And I was happy the chairman of the finance committee, proud to the budget, raised this issue. We need to close the wastage in the system. And that must start from the central government.
Definitely. if we need to
exactly.
see our way
and
forward.
These are very critical points. So if you have all these brilliant projects like the U-Start, the Ghana Cares of Batampa project and what have you, where is the money or the funding to finance these projects? If you are not making money.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the fiscal gap or the financing gap, it is very huge.
Yeah.
The IMF fiscal monitor will tell you it's about 14.5%. The government will say no. Other organizations like Fitch, Moody's would also peg it at a higher rate, about 12, 13%. So it tells you that there is a major problem. And I'm happy the central bank had consistently spoken about that. So drastic action is necessary. That is why, for me, I'm for the e-levy, but the rate must be reduced. And we must also look at pushing it to cover other payment platforms and not necessarily mobile money. So if the rate comes to 1% or below 1%, that will be good, because we need money.
Well, that's
one way of getting money is through the electronic transaction.
That's something we are looking forward to seeing, as the minister promises us that it's going to continue negotiation with the minority to reach consensus. Charles Nixon Yeboah is editor with Joy Business. Also this afternoon, some drivers in Ashaman and Kaswa remain on strike despite the calling of their leaders to call off the strike. And also we know there's a meeting this afternoon at the presidency to meet their leaders to find a solution to this problem. We'll bring you details of all of that shortly on the Pulse. Welcome back to the Pulse. We are live from our studios. We are also live on all our social media handles. It's on JoyNews on TV. Tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. My personal handle is at Denana Aisha. This afternoon, some drivers in Ashaiman and Kaswa remain on strike despite the leadership of the Ghana Private Road Transport Union announcing a suspension of the action. Throughout this morning, the drivers have been on strike in an effort to force government to reduce taxes on petroleum products, which they say has led to the high cost of petrol, diesel and LPG. We have details of these taxes and a breakdown for you. But the impact of the nationwide strike by commercial transport operators was felt most by ordinary Ghanaians who use the public transport system to commute daily. Among others, some have missed examinations, botched appointments and turned up late to work. Across the country, hundreds of commuters were left stranded the entire morning with no means of transportation. Some of them told Joy News they had to wait for hours or walk long distances to get to work.
We are live here at the Circle Odona Trotro station, where most of the drivers are confused as to whether to follow what they have heard on radio or seen on TV, that they are going to be embarking on a sit-down national strike. Well, over here, some of the drivers have decided to board their vehicles and transport them to their various destinations. Some others tell us that they don't know what to do. They are in a state of confusion, waiting for national to confirm the strike to them before possibly they can join that strike. We'll talk to some of the drivers here who would have wished that they actually go on strike so that possibly government will come to the table and negotiate for their demands to be effected. Tell me, so this station you are working, where are you working?
Yes, this morning we'll come, I will say, for 4 p.m. We come there to tell it no work. Then we there is that before, after 5:30 to 6. Then we just say, let's say, Commander, say, make it. That's why we the work.
So you haven't heard anything from National that you are going on strike?
I don't know, I didn't hear anything from National to 6 morning before I see they say Commander, chief, what do you call it? They say chief, and they say make it. That's why. Okay. And some people planted they didn't want, unless this place, this place would they do that.
Great, thank you very much. So this particular station here well, they are working. It tells me that, well, because they've not received any official communication from their secretariat, they'll proceed on work until further notice. Okay, so this is one of many cars here, empty. The gentlemen that you see inside are preventing them from loading. This is the situation across many bus terminals in the city of Accra. As you can see from the shot, many people stranded. Ordinarily, they would have been at their various places of work, but that is not the situation. Well, let me talk to the gentleman here. How long have you been here?
Over 2 hours now.
2 hours now? So what have you been doing here?
I was waiting for a car, but the cars are not moving, so I've called home and someone is coming to...
So someone's coming to pick you and take you to work?
To Accra.
To Accra, okay, I see. So you've been here for 2 hours, but still he's not been able to get a transport, a commercial car that will take him to his destination. He says that he's going to Accra. His situation is not different.
I'm starting from Ablekuma 6 o'clock. I'm here, now I'm coming right here.
So you left Ablekuma 6 o'clock?
Ablekuma 6 o'clock.
Wow. So why are you not getting here?
I won't get, I get a taxi. Uber, small to market to here, before I'm here.
I mean, how does that make you feel?
I'm feeling to go home.
I've talked to some of the transport operators here who will tell me about some of their concerns here. And Bossman,
I break too much.
So one year, Juma, so someone yes, can tell
want to phone, what is my phone, what is my yes, and what is my.
Around midday, the Ghana Private Road Transport Union issued a statement asking its members to suspend the strike as they prepare to meet government on the matter. Currently, that meeting is underway at the presidency. But let's take you live to to the ground and to some transport terminals and see what exactly is happening there. My colleague Faustina Safo and Mamiese have been out and about to check what's happening in town. Let me start with you, Mamiese. Where are you and what's the situation there? Okay, so Faustina Safo would talk to us first. Faustina Safo, where are you and what's the situation there?
Hi, Aisha. I'm currently at the Kaswa station. I'm hoping you can hear me. I'm hoping you can hear me. This morning, chaotic is what best describes the scene here at the Kaswa station. Dozens of residents were stranded as drivers refused to move their vehicle. In fact, our camera spotted a police van attempting to help some of these stranded residents to their location. And indeed, you could see that everybody wanted a spot in that vehicle, but unfortunately, it couldn't take all of them. Now, they are not the only ones affected. Traders here at the Kaswa station are also saying that the whole day they have not been able to achieve their sales. Now, if you look behind me, you could see, despite the directive from the GPRTU that drivers should resume operation, some vehicles are still grounded, yet to make any official movement. So we will be speaking to some of the drivers as well as some commuters who have had to wait here for more than 3 hours just to get a vehicle. Some of them who have been speaking to us say that they are so excited that finally the GPRTU have been able to speak to the drivers to resume operations. But unfortunately, even with that directive, some drivers who are going according to GPRTU and have resumed operations are finding it difficult getting passengers because now most of them have gone home. So let's speak to some of the drivers here. Some of them are still angry that government is yet to reduce fuel prices. You're live on JoyNews. And then you say, 1 year, Juma. I'm saying.
I'm saying 3 days now starting information say demonstration kakra. But anapa I say baba te chiri na imula order na ba. Te firi ho na afi package kwa wontum tuka. Omo clock station ina. Ulo du kwa na wo kwa. Wo mpirema nko. Ti mu hora na afi befo bebia na chese taso a bibia koso se demonstration kwa na bia ya.
musi omuntifo no. Government yombeye. But you say be mu still omumbe juma.
I don't cry for another. You can't do na chef a fair no more. Emwa. Cause in the problem we just came from so it's kind of day before. And this 1 2 4 and so na so we I just wood ko dia wedgman. And tinida say Obama phone na before na yin what time. I'm not a
Well, I've been speaking to, he's a driver here, and he says that this morning he had to park his vehicle because he received directives from his superiors that they should not make any movement. And for those of them who tried to defy the directive, they were, somewhat restricted, and they ensured that they kept to it. And then he's saying that government should ensure that they stick to their promise of reducing the fuel prices. There are more people who are angry here. They want to speak to us, more drivers. Me patrol here driving ni say see amusi enti fuel no enti na man be ejuma ende.
Yes, the air can yes aban say fuel no hwema kakra because adrawa for ble. And na okoto fuel oba de be tia be kono de utua na no ano esa akosoro. Nti de ni hwe kan de air can sala aban ne penifo say omo hwe ye na adrawa for ye bre no omo nye fuel no bibi kakra ma ye because okoto spare parts no de ono kofa na si fuel or the boy be atoso driver ni ulodi fu esenka auto de koba na ba wonya kakra didi na eno nso obeba on top point esenka wonya no eso asate ye de enya se ye fe ne se ye beto lolu femu ye nya ya adwen se ye pese ye to lolu femu ba de esla ban ne penifo se ye pa omo chow kotodwegu form ye sele wo mo omo ntifu eno so ma na lolu fe ni nyina ba bi ejina ye ni so ade ho ni ya nyina
but almost your metifo no first na ye ukoto golf filling station 699 say say almost your mate so 685 but mum penesa
mami no kra ye baako o check sa liter no per liter no do mate free so 20 pesos kra enu and if an say me ko ye long journey ye run me load free car so konkoko na say me ba na me to be kumase me to be 40 liters na say 40 liters no we it say 10 pesos free per liter so sika sen na wa ye free so ye de ni hwe kan ye ntimi ni aban twen de ye sela aban ya ne say ene ne penfo say ye sela wo mo ada o mo hwe na ye sefu ene de ye ble ene 3 days driver ni ba ko ne yele ja no ada ya wo se ntimi ma ko mo ntimi hwe fie enye se driver na ye kwase ampani o obekọ beba no sika no ena lonje na adwuma ye no so no ebu a 2 days kwase na wonya bia konti ko ba kakra no enso de ye sela aban ya no no ye ni sela na ye sela se ye pa ne chow o mo hwe mo nya fufu ene biduma ne ye bre.
So this is another driver. He's saying that, in fact, just 3 days ago, one of the drivers, his wife had to leave him because he cannot take care of the family. And that's because the fuel prices are too expensive. They say the reduction government has made so far is not enough. So there are more people here who would like to speak to us. We are driving. Sesia de kosuno. Uhune saying.
And the kosuno de nyamianum no kreni enye. Fu ene de so oteso. Oteso man ya ebeboa. Ebi say yen kase ye to no refi ma ho kire na na san ba mo. Nti oteso ni say ba no ma ne enzo enyina atima manage. Eze wo kwa adwuma ba wonya hwe. Ka wura bu office wadi ni sika. Eso na efu we no e na okọ. Eze fe so beko kuma ba bu ya to 400. Eze wo nto 500 be 600 before that do bekoba. Ahe no ba di opasinya ni ho. To mo hwe na mo nteso man na ye ntu aye ye pe man ne nkoso ntinye bibia na epese ano pom kasa kire ya ti ye adwuma. To mo so nti enzo asem ne man na enzo bibia nkoyi.
Well, that is it here live from the Kaswa station. Aisha, the drivers are saying that they have heeded to the calls of the GPRTU union. They have called off the strike, but they want government to keep their part of the bargain. Aisha, over to you in the studio.
Hopefully the meeting underway at the presidency with their leadership will address this. But my colleague Mamiesi Thompson also spoke with some drivers earlier. Let's listen to them.
Currently at the Sherman Main station, you can see behind me that the drivers and the mates are playing football. Why? They are on strike. They are not working. According to them, they will not work until government reduces the taxes on petroleum products. We are here to find out how they they're spending their day, and then also to talk to some of them about the concerns that they are taking to government, how they want their concerns to be addressed. And we're here with some of the drivers who are playing dummy and other games to, while away the time whilst they're not working. See how it's going to go with them. So join me, let's talk to some of the drivers. I mean, as you can see, the ball just hit me and you realize that they're having their time here at their Sherman station, playing ball, playing other games and bonding while they are not working. And so let's see to some of them and talk to them about how their concerns should be addressed.
Your station has been transformed to a football park. How is it that you are in the heat of a demonstration, or let me say a strike, trying to get the attention of government to reduce transport of petroleum products? And it looks like they're having fun.
Bye. Mamiesi Thompson now joins us with more. Mamiesi, where are you currently, and what can you tell us about where you are?
Currently at one of the stations here at the Sherman, and following the president's directive, the situation hasn't changed much. Personally, I had to walk all the way from Tema Community A to a Sherman because I couldn't get any trotro or taxi to bring me here.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the situation hasn't changed, not because they are disregarding the president's directive, but the president's directive came in a little bit too late. When it came, most of the drivers had gone home, and even the main station gates have been closed. I've been speaking to the GPRTU communications team member, Mr. Samuel Amwa, who is currently with me as we speak. I will be asking him a few questions about the current directive that has come from the president. Mr. Amwa, thank you so much for joining us on the poll. We know that the president has directed you to call off the strike. What is the development coming after that?
Thank you very much. The development now is that, yes, we've had that information that the president has asked us to call off the strike action, of which we have done just that. But the problem is we, the leaders, have announced that we have informed all our drivers to go back and do their normal work. But at the moment, most of the drivers are not working, and the problem is that this information came in late. We started this strike action way back from Thursday. We sent, a communique all around our branches and our members, and that is what they do. Most of the drivers even didn't go and pick their vehicles from their car owners. And most of them too, when you ask them to go back and work, what they will tell you is the day has already ended. So that is why you see few of them are working, but most of them are still, parked their vehicles, and now they are not working at the moment.
Right, and we know that your leaders are meeting the president. They are back to the negotiation table. Have you heard anything? Has there been any development from that place as well?
At the moment, we've not heard anything, and we are still waiting for them to come and tell us something. Or we have a bigger platform. We are expecting that whatever will come out from there, they will put it on the platform for all of us to know what is happening. So at the moment, we are still waiting for them to hear something better from them.
I mean, I still want to ask this question. Do you think that the strike today achieved what you were aiming at?
I would say yes and no. Yes is that from onset, all these things from the beginning, we were approaching the transport ministry. The minister asked us to, put everything on paper and that he's going to present it. Later on, they sent two deputy ministers to meet the coalition members. That is the deputy transport minister and the deputy energy minister. That one too, we couldn't hear anything from them. So this time around that we started embarking on the strike, that is when we have found out that the president himself has stepped in. So I think we are on course. So we believe this little strike, or the few hours that we decided not to work, has yielded something of which we know since this thing has got into the office of the president, at least there is going to be something better, and we know what we are looking for. I believe we'll get it.
I know you have to go, but before you go, if what you're looking for isn't handed over to you, what will be your next action?
I would say that this strike action that we decided to embark, we said we are going to embark on indefinite strike action. That means we couldn't fix a specific day that today we are doing it for 1 day or 2 days. What we are looking for right now is for the government to scrap those taxes that we are mentioning. If that thing fails, the coalition will quickly meet and a decision will be taken. For that decision, I can't say it now.
So, Aisha, you heard from Samuel Amwa. He is a member of the communications team of the GPRTU here in Ashaiman. And I can tell you that the impact of this will still be felt in the evening because many of the drivers have gone home. They are not here currently. And so we'll be seeing more workers walking home from work and students as well as the day goes. Maybe the situation is going to improve tomorrow when all of them fully resume work. Aisha.
Mamiesi Thompson is a woman on the ground checking for us what is going on over there. Let's bring in policy analyst Peter Tekwe. Mr. Tekwe, I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. What's the way out of this, especially looking at our tax structure? Kindly unmute for me, Mr. Tekwe.
Sorry. The situation we are in now calls for more engagement, and that is the word now. There should have been more engagement from the beginning. I kept saying that anytime there's going to be fuel price increases, the drivers' union, which is one of the major stakeholders in the transport value chain, should be involved. I mean, for them to appreciate the reason for the price increases. They have been sending this signal for some time now. And according to them, nobody has bothered to, contact them. But they play a very sensitive role in the economy. And you can imagine if all of them have been grounded, even some of them have been working at some level, assuming other, ones like the taxis, the Ubers and stuff, all of them set ground totally. There's going to be chaos. And so the situation and the way forward is that there should have been earlier engagement. We need to be more proactive in managing situations of such nature because these are people who need to understand, and they are people who understand in the sense that when prices of petroleum goes up, they wait for a while before transport fares also goes up, which means that they are accommodating. So we need to actually also engage them more on that level. Sometimes I think that we take certain sectors of the economy or certain people for granted, and that is what is resulting in what is happening now, unfortunately.
Now, these drivers are asking for some levies to be scrapped off on petroleum products. Is it possible government can do something about this?
Government can do something about it. You see, if you look at the price build-up, there are some aspects that government has control. One, let me give you some examples. We have what is the debt recovery and then stabilization, which is just 14%. But you see that because of the sharp depreciation of the currency, the impact of this 40% was not dropped. So you don't even see that there has been reduction. Now, we have other taxes like the sanitation and the pollution and the sanitation recovery levy, which is 10 pesos. Government can do something about it. We have the special petroleum tax levy. Now, this tax was introduced, I think, 2014 or thereabout, when the prices of the product at the world market has dropped sharply. And government, of course, is losing revenue. And so the reason was that, look, let's bring in some tax that will help to, close the revenue gap that we are losing in the petroleum price build-up or our petroleum sector. Now, prices have evolved over the years, but this is still there. And it's 46 pesos. Government can do something about it. Look, toll debt recovery, the debt, we have energy debt recovery levy. This is meant for tolls. It is something that is costing us 49 pesos in the price build-up. Is government saying that these major items I mentioned, the debt recovery levy, the sanitation and pollution recovery levy,
there's a special petroleum tax.
Government can do something if they can take off 14 pesos, the 49 pesos for the debt recovery levy, energy debt recovery levy, the 46 pesos for the special petroleum tax. And I told you the reason why this petroleum tax was introduced. Now that the prices have evolved, can the government do something about it? It's about engagement, and I think that something can be done about it.
Peter Tepwe is a policy analyst. I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. And to other stories, the Christian Council is urging Ghanaians to rally behind the anti-gay bill as it does not seek to repress minority groups, but rather help them. At the Capacity Building on Leadership, Diaconia and Development Summit for Selected Churches in Africa, Chairman of the Council, Reverend Joseph Obiri-Eboa, said he wants Ghanaians to unite in pushing for the passage of the bill. Sarah Mensah has more.
Chairman of the Christian Council of Ghana, Reverend Joseph Obiri-Eboa says Ghanaians should rather embrace the passing of the Proper Sexual Human Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill because it has some positive sides which protects the homosexuals. Speaking at the Capacity Building on Leadership, Diaconia and Development Summit for Selected Churches in African, Anglophone and Francophone countries by World Council of Churches in collaboration with All African Council of Churches in Accra, Reverend Mante said if Parliament refuses to pass the bill, sexual minority groups will suffer.
If they don't pass, the bill right now, the current one will remain, and those who profess to be gay and lesbians and bisexual and so they will suffer, because I'm saying that the current bill, the current law itself, if you like, discriminates against them. The current law, as it is, just that it is not adequate. Are you with me? Yeah. So they will suffer more. That is why people go and hide in places and they beat them and sometimes they kill them and so on. If it is brought open now, and people have not read this particular bill, there's some positive sides in that matter. My only challenge to the bill is that sometimes the offenses that... They said if you commit the offense, the penalty, some of the penalties are too high, and I would wish that Parliament would bring them down. That's my only comment. Where it is 5 years, it can be 2 years. Where it is 10 years, it can be 5 years, things like that. Otherwise, but then beyond that, if you read the bill very carefully, I think it's very, very healthy, and it really speaks the mind of most Ghanaians, about 90% of us.
President for the All Africa Conference of Churches, Right Reverend Arnold Temple, stated that the conference is to empower and build the capacity of the church leaders to effectively support its members and the underprivileged in society, which they termed as diaconia.
Is an engagement with people who are suffering. It is the caring ministry of the church. That's what diaconial ministry is all about. And we're here to help build the capacity and enhance the capacity of church leaders so that we will effectively engage in that fullness of life ministry, in that they would be equipped to go and equip others.
General Secretary for the AACC, Dr. Bright Maudo, says the church has an obligation to play a role in the development of the state. Therefore, the meeting is being held to ensure the church keeps abreast of what is happening and to support the state by creating job opportunities.
Our meeting here is to ensure that the church is brought abreast with what is happening within society, within the environment, because they have to play a complementary role in what the government does to promote economic benefits, to promote employment. Therefore, the church has an obligation to actually do what is investment and what is spiritual, so that the church's investment must support its spiritual work and also set up enterprises like hotels, like industries. In fact, when you look at the missionaries that came, they did not only come to set up churches, they also set up hotels, industries, housing, and all enterprises to give support to the church, to the state. And so the church has a role to play.
This is the first ever conference held in Ghana, and it had 40 participants from 11 African countries.
We'll take a break on The Pulse. We're back with more. And as I wrap up The Pulse this afternoon, my name is Aisha Ibrahim. Log on to myjoyonline.com. You get updates of all the developing stories. Let's Talk Showbiz is up next. Enjoy the rest of our programs.